Hey everybody, we just finished our discussion of the second discussion of part two of the Pilgrim's Progress. And since the end of our first discussion, I've really been wanting to make this little video, which I'm going to call a word about legacy. I, from the beginning, have thought that um, maybe the strength of one of the force factors of part two is watching the legacy of a Christian who goes forward. And we saw that immediately with what happened with his family, that even though he wasn't there anymore, they thought about and knew his words and the strength and power of his words, and they left to go follow. They had the desire in their hearts to go to heaven. And so I've really been thinking about the word legacy. And as God would have it, um, within a week of that discussion, I attended a funeral of a very strong Christian, in fact, a former pastor that we had sat under a bit. And we knew his legacy was great in that regard. But what is always so, oh, it's so hopeful when you attend the funeral of a strong believer is that what you realize is legacy. What you see is the legacy you would expect that there are people who became believers. Um, Especially when it's a pastor, you probably just think, oh, everybody has, they're going to have legacy that none of the rest of us will. But it's always so, I don't know, joyful may not be the right word, but it's joyful to hear the stories of children and grandchildren and the grandchildren's friends of who their grandparent was as a Christian, because it was a person who talked about God. And this person in particular talked a lot about heaven. They said he talked about heaven, which of course also reminded me of the Pilgrim's Progress and going to the celestial city and all of our focus on being heavenly minded. And it really reinforced for me and reminded me that that is something that we can all think about. We always think about our legacy when we go to funerals. We can't help it, especially when we hear those kinds of testimonies. And so I'm praying that we all who are on this journey with Christiana and Mercy think about our legacy. Then within another week, we've only been off for 2 weeks. So both these things happen within 2 weeks. My husband and I met um, a pastor, I guess his role as pastor, who was had brought a youth group out to camp. And he was sharing his story. He was talking about the kids. And as I listened, I thought, oh, he's from Ireland. This man was from Ireland. And so when there was a good opportunity, I asked him about where he was from. And he was describing where. He didn't tell me the city, but he was describing where. And, the group that he was leading is from a tiny, tiny town in Nebraska. And so, like, well, how did you get here? And he was surprised that we hadn't heard of here before we signed on to work here. But I was surprised how he got here. And he said that he had attended a pastor's conference in Texas a number of years ago. And a woman who worked with these students was with uh, a group with special, um, just special needs in a way. And she had stated during her talk at the conference, there's no one to serve my people. And that stuck with him, he said, even though he tried to get rid of it. So he was back home in Ireland. And 3 months later, I think, contacted her, and no one had spoken up. And so he and his family packed up from Ireland and came to a small town in Nebraska, a very small town, to serve and minister. And I was again reminded of the legacy that he will have, which, first of all, this reminder that we all need to know that there are people from other nations who are coming as missionaries to our country. Um, which always just strikes me as, wow, what are we missing? But anyway, the thought about legacy in those two men, the the seeds that not only they plant that they know they're planting or they hope they're planting, but then even a seed with myself and my husband that even though we're already on the journey, this there's an inspirational seed planted in a thought that I can't really shake of what he was willing to do so that people would know the love of Jesus and what lengths he went to do it. And so that's a kind of legacy that I want to leave. I want to talk about heaven and I want to make a difference in people's lives. And I pray that you as well are, I know many of you are those people. And I pray that all of you find those people who can speak to you and confirm to you about legacy or prayer or all the other things that we're finding in this book. And I do pray that if you have not joined us on this journey, that you would get a copy of the Pilgrim's Progress. We are doing the edited by Pooley version, which you can find on Amazon. So I'd love to see you. And thank you for listening.